Hello, welcome back to Today in Bad Theology. Today in Bad Theology, we look at what is part one of a series on race and how it is being used theologically and in bad theology. Today I want to focus on attempts by some white American Christians to argue that God made them white, and they are proud of that, and they shouldn't feel upset about it. There are a number of memes going around on social media. If you don't live in a far-left echo chamber, you have to get out and see these things. If you do live in a far-left echo chamber, get the hell out of the thing. Their echo chambers are not a good place to be. And you need to see what everybody else is saying, and some of what they're saying is really weird. There are lots of claims that God made us white, made people like me white, and so I should be proud of my whiteness, for God made me that way and blessed me. There are so many people I could pick on about this. I'm not going to pick just one. It's just a blanket statement that this sort of theology is bad theology. Why is it bad theology to say God made me white? Especially when you think of other theologies that may say, we're going to have a black theology or an East Asian theology or whatever. What it comes down to is the understanding of race as a construct. That's where we need to start with this. Race is constructed. It is something understood socially, culturally. We're socialized into it. There is no biological distinction between races, certainly between white and black in the United States. It's just a matter of skin pigmentation. Race begins to enter the lexicon, and the idea of being white enters common usage during the colonial period in North America, when Anglo colonists needed to differentiate themselves from their dark-skinned slaves. Now, obviously, they knew where their slaves were coming from. They knew they were taking them from sub-Saharan Africa, and they understood this. It's not like nobody had noticed the difference, but it became legally encoded, and whiteness became a legally encoded superior status. That superiority has persisted ever since. Now, there were times when blacks were automatically not the same as everybody else. There were times when you could have black freedmen, but clearly being white was better. Slaves were free following the Civil War and the passage of the 13th Amendment. It continues to be the case, however, that in practice, whites have more rights and more power than anybody else in the United States. So having a theology of, say, black liberation, that's something you need to have, because in the United States, being black automatically puts you behind everybody else. All right, this is a group of people that need to have a theology of liberation, I would say. Whites may need a theology of liberation, but it's to liberate us from our whiteness, and that's a discussion for another time. Race is constructed, is the point. And it was constructed in colonial times, and it's constructed now. It remains better in a lot of ways. I have a lot of advantages from being white that a black man my age, even with my economic background, would not have. There are places I can go that women can't go and that black men can't go. Those are advantages, and those are advantages that society has given me. I do not have those advantages because biology gave them to me, and I don't have those advantages because God gave them to me. So claiming that I'm white, God made me this way, I'm proud of it, is a way of saying, I have a superior status, and I'm simply not going to give it up. Now, Is that bad theology, or is that theology that simply is not so good? Remember, all of us have theology that's not so good. Every now and then, we're trying, but it's just not quite good. Bad theology is theology that's intentionally trying to hurt someone, make us better than someone else, and slap God's name on it to justify things. And I can understand how perhaps in a vacuum, in no situation anything like present-day United States of America, you could argue that being proud of your white heritage would be not so good theology. Because they say, well, maybe you just needed to learn that race was a construct. Once you understand race as a construct, you say, I can't really be proud of being white because we just kind of made that up, all right? And what is white changes, right? There was a time when my Anglo ancestors would have been white. My Irish and German ancestors would not have been. And then magically they became white. Just like there was a time when Italian Americans weren't considered white. Now they're white. Society decided that for us. And so maybe you just learned this and now you can say, well, your theology was not so good, something has happened. The problem, though, is we're claiming to be proud of this status that has been given to us. Some people have referred to this as white privilege, as actually white blessing, which is, again, maybe you're trying, but it's very dangerous to suggest God simply put me in this superior position. That sounds so much like, white man's burden going into Africa and going into South Asia and being superior to these poor people and helping them out. Oh my God, this is awful. This is setting yourself up as better than someone. And the problem with whiteness in the United States is that it is understood socially, culturally, and sometimes legally as superior to blackness. And once we are claiming that God made us white, we're claiming God made us superior. And I think that is what is intended in such claims. To be proud of whiteness is saying, I'm proud that I have more stuff, more status, and I want to say that God wants it that way. To me, there's a simple test. What is it that we don't want to give up about being white? There are things we sometimes have to give up in life. And you say, why would you not want to give that up? Some of those things may be small. Some of us develop food intolerances and have to give up eating something, perhaps something we really liked. Well, why don't you want to give that up? Oh, I enjoyed the flavor, but I can live without it. Other things, you'd say, well, could you give up, say, your child? There are times it's tempting, but for the most part, that would be a horrifying decision. It would wreck you. No, of course not. Why? Because I love my child, and my child loves me. Why don't you want to give up being white? What is it that being white gives you? I think if we're honest, we know being white gives you a lot of power and a lot of privilege in this country. Claiming that God is the source of that is using God to justify decisions that society makes. That's bad theology. Society cannot be the sole determining factor in what God is about. God makes every human being, absolutely. God is my creator. I can say that even though I understand biology far better than the authors of Genesis did, and I don't even understand biology that well. But God didn't make me white. Society made me white. God made me human, and I need to work on a society where humans are humans and there's not a white or black. Well, that's it for this part of this series. We're going to revisit this as an ongoing issue, so stay tuned. We'll tackle some other white and black things, and I'm not going to be able to get to everything, but if there's something in particular you'd like me to talk about, let me know. You can mention that in the comments below. The next one is actually going to be on white Jesus, one of my favorite things to complain about, something that I think needs a close, careful attention. So that'll be our next one. So drop a comment below if you want. Don't forget, subscribe, like, share, binge watch, whatever. Hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time.